Hey everybody, welcome to the Mana Leek. I'm John, as always. Another day, another set review. This time we're taking a look at all of the red cards in Ravnica Allegiance, which I still pause every single time I say it and want to say Guilds of Ravnica or something else. But yeah, we're going to take a look at all of these cards in a limited perspective. We're talking draft, we're talking sealed. We're not talking constructed. We're not talking legacy or commander or even Canadian Highlander. Remember, these are my opinions. These are the ways that I'm going to approach this format this week, next week, and these ratings might change week to week or month to month. So, you know, keep that in mind. And of course, keep in mind that I want to hear your thoughts as well in the comments down below. Now, just before we jump into the set review, I do want to do something very exciting here and talk about Inked Gaming for a second, and how you can get a free playmat. You might know I'm an Inked Gaming affiliate. Use the promo code MANALEEK10, all one word, 10 is the number, to get 10% off your order at Inked Gaming. But I am now an Inked Gaming sponsored affiliate, which means I get more support from them and I work more closely with them, which can also mean some more giveaways for you guys. So if you go over to twitch.tv/themanaleek and you check out my stream on January 17th, where I'll be playing Ravnica Allegiance, as it will have come out on both mtgO and mtgRNA. I don't know which one I'm going to play it on just yet. You will get a chance to win a playmat. If you haven't checked out my streams before, we do marble races during the streams. Marble races are basically a fancy way of doing a randomized giveaway. We actually play them for fun and keep track of points with the leaderboard system, but I also do use them when we do giveaways. So we'll be doing a Marble Grand Prix, which means for everybody who is there that day, we will do a series of races, and the overall point total winner will get themselves a playmat. So go check that out, twitch.tv/themanaleek on January 17th, and go check out Inked Gaming and use the promo code MANALEEK10 if you do buy something there for 10% off your order. But let's get started with the first card, Act of Treason. Act of Treason is 2 and a red for a sorcery at common. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. We've seen this card many times, as well, of course, as variants of it. It's historically a card that I avoid if the intention is to steal a creature, attack with it, and give it back. A lot of players like that, but it's way less impactful than you think. If you're doing this just to get in a few points of damage, it's just not worth it. You spent a portion, if not your entire turn. You didn't change the board state. You didn't change their board state. So what was the point? Now, playing this to end a game is a very big game, and if you're playing it with just attack in mind, then that is definitely how you want to use this. This should be your final turn. It shouldn't be done turn 3 or turn 4 or whatever just to get into damage. Damage for damage's sake is just not good enough, but we have sacrifice outlets in this format. A relatively fair number of them. Now, an aspect of the sacrifice deck does want to be black-white, but there is definitely black-red aspects to it, and a full-on Mardu version as well if you want to get really spicy. And in a sacrifice deck, Act of Treason goes up incredibly because you take this, you attack with it, you get in for some damage, and then you sack it, and you get some more benefit out of it, and you change their board state. If you're doing that, this is like a C+. You want this card in your deck. If you are not, if you're just taking a creature of theirs and attacking with it and giving it back, this is much more like a C-. I don't tend to play it, and you should only play it to end the game, not to do anything else. So C-, C+, it really depends on the deck. Up next is Amplifier. Amplifier is 2 red for a creature elemental at rare. It's a 1/1 with a lot of words. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Until your next turn, so all the way through your opponent's turn, Amplifier's base power becomes twice that card's power, and its base toughness becomes twice that card's toughness. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this card has generated a lot of conversation and controversy already, and people are on sides of it being horrible and sides of it being amazing, and I think it's actually not that great. Originally, I thought the creature stayed on top, and so you basically turned off Mana Flood, but that would have been really good. No, the revealed creature goes to the bottom of the deck along with the rest of those cards. So you're paying 4 mana for a 1/1. That next turn will be some amount bigger. Who knows how big? I don't know. Do you know? Nobody knows. Now, if your floor is that you're playing 2/2s, this is going to be a 4/4 at least, so it's a 4/4 for 4 at a floor. Maybe if you're playing any 1/2s or 1/3s or 1/1s with Riot or things like that, then maybe it's just a 2/2, which is really awful for 4 mana. And yeah, sure, maybe sometimes you flip, I don't know, a 5/5, and this is a 10/10, and then you get to, I don't know, attack with it, have it chump block for one turn, and then it's not going to be a 10-10 for probably the rest of the game. Yeah, I think people are really best case scenario mentality here. Without trample or flying or anything like that, this is at best a big dumb vanilla creature, and at worst it's a small dumb vanilla creature that you paid 4 for, and you never know what it's going to be. That's not how I play Magic. I don't want to play this card. I'm starting this at a D-. I know people are going to give this C's and B's. D- for me for Amplifier. Up next is Burn Bright. Burn Bright is 2 and a red for an instant at common. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. That, of course, is Trumpet Blast, except Trumpet Blast is attacking creatures, so there's a weird situation where you cast it on defense and it actually pumps your opponent's team. This one's fixed. You can't accidentally do that. Yeah, this is fine. It's Trumpet Blast. If you're a go wide aggro deck, this is a card that you can maybe play and sometimes will end the game. And if you're not, you don't play it. It's a C at the ceiling in the aggro deck, and it's a D- if you're not going to go super, super wide. So D-, C, you play this if you have a spot and if it makes sense, and I think probably more times than not, you don't play this. C, D- for Burn Bright. Up next is Burning Tree Vandal. Burning Tree Vandal is 2 and a red for a creature human rogue at common. It's a 2/1 with Riot. This is our first time seeing Riot. Riot says that this creature enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. This, of course, is the Gruul mechanic. You'll see it in red, you'll see it in green. Whenever Burning Tree Vandal attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So you get to rummage. So you get a 2/1 haste for 3 that rummages on attack, which is okay. Pretty unspectacular, but on turn 3, if they don't have a blocker, that's probably going to feel pretty good. I think you probably cut this a little tiny bit more often than not, though. A 3/2 rummager for 3, that's really filler territory, I think, because you can't activate it without actually attacking with it, and a 3/2 just dies to everything. So I think I'm going to go with a C on this. I think it's fine filler, ultimately. There are going to be situations where the hasty version of this feels a little bit better than a C, but I'm not going to go up to C+ on this, so just a C for Burning Tree Vandal. Up next is Cavalcade of Calamity. Cavalcade of Calamity is 1 and a red for, an enchantment. At uncommon, whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade of Calamity deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. Why are you attacking with 1 power creatures or 0 power creatures? That's not how you win. That's not how you win in Rakdos. That's definitely not how you win in Gruul. Where are the creatures that you're attacking with this card? And then if you do play those garbage creatures and attack with them, they actually attack for 2. But you spent maybe your turn 2 playing this card, or you spent part of your future turns playing this. You spent a card slot playing this card. This card is yet again added to the pile of excruciatingly bad enchantments in this set. F- for Cavalcade of Calamity. Never, ever play this card. F-. Up next is Clamor Shaman. Clamor Shaman feels like it should rhyme. 2 and a red for a creature Goblin Shaman at uncommon. It's a 1/1 with Riot. Whenever Clamor Shaman attacks, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. Yeah, this is probably just amazing. Goblin Heel Cutter is the obvious parallel here from Fate Reforged, and if you didn't play with it, it was insane. And this can be hasty if you want it to be, just like Goblin Heel Cutter could have. With haste, it doesn't survive as well as Heel Cutter did, because it's a 1/1 rather than a 2/2. Heel Cutter was a 3/2. But without haste, it's basically the same card. Kind of. Go with me here. This is probably going to be deceptively strong, and if you haven't experienced Heel Cutter, you might even think this is bad. I'm going to start very high on this at a B. In an aggro deck, especially if you get a couple of these, it's just going to shut things down. You get yourself a 2/2 that attacks in and takes out a blocker. Barring huge board stalls, your opponents generally don't have that many blockers. And taking 1 out, especially if you are a relatively wide-ish Rakdos or Gruul deck, can definitely be the end of the game, if not that turn, then relatively soon after. So I'm going to go with a B on Clamor Shaman. I think you take it immediately following bombs and removal, and I think it's going to be way better than some players who haven't experienced Heel Cutter think. B for Clamor Shaman. Up next is Daggercaster. Daggercaster is 3 and a red for a creature Viashino Rogue at uncommon. It's a 2/3. When Daggercaster enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. This is a very 23rd card, arguably even just more of a sideboard card. A 2/3 for 4 is just way too much mana. I don't like paying 3 mana for a 2/3, let alone 4 mana, even if it does 1 damage to my opponent. Whatever, sure, spectacle, but whatever. The only way that this has playable value for me is if you're taking down a bunch of X1s. If you're taking down one X1, that's probably okay, but I'd really prefer to be taking down multiples. So I don't really think that you main deck this. I think you keep it in your sideboard until you see a bunch of spirits, see a bunch of X1s, etc. It does wildly change in the world of Arena and Best of Ones, where I think you do main deck this just because there will be enough people playing spirits and enough people playing multiple X1s that you will get some more value out of this, and you don't have that chance to side this in, which of course is a massive downside of Best of One, and while it's fast and can be fun here or there, is not good magic to me. So you play this much more like a C+ in Best of One, but in Best of 3, where you have that option of sideboarding, I think you actually keep this in the sideboard as a D+. So D+ for Daggercaster. Up next is Deface. Deface is a single red mana for a sorcery at common. Choose one, destroy target artifact, or destroy target creature with Defender. I'm never playing this in the main deck ever, even in Best of One. There are so few relevant artifacts to care about. I think arguably there are 2 that you would care about, and 1 this can't target it. So the artifact side of this basically only hits Gate Colossus. Destroy target creature with Defender, there's not too many of those that I really would care about either. So there's no way that you should ever main deck this in Best of One, and you should never main deck this in Best of 3. Only bring this in Game 2 and Game 3 after you see a Gate Colossus that you can't deal with, or if there's a Defender that's causing serious problems for your deck. So this is a straight D. It's not a main deckable card in any version of Draft or Sealed. Up next, we're going to talk about Electro Dominance, another quite possibly best card of the set. X red for an instant at rare, Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target. It's a fixed Banefire because you have to pay 1 more mana, but there's more written on this card. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Also, did I mention it's an instant? This is insane. Absolutely insane. If you hated M19 with Banefire, then you're gonna hate this card. At instant speed, it means it can really, truly come out of nowhere. You can counter it, but it's limited. You're not actually going to counter this, and bravo if you do. And if this doesn't just kill you, maybe the free card that they get kills you. Now, because this is not, you can cast it till end of turn, there's no timing restriction on this, meaning that they can cast a creature on your turn, they can cast a sorcery spell on your turn alongside this. This card is a snap first pick. There is no reason to ever pass this. Thankfully, the double red makes it slightly hard to splash, but it still might even be worth it. Very, 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 very good card here. This is just an A+ for Electro Dominance. Up next is Feral Maka. Feral Maka is 1 and a red for a creature cat at common. It's a 2/2 with some flavor text. That's it. So back in the day, if red got a 2/2 for 2, which it did not that often, it had some sort of downside. It dealt damage to you. You had to sacrifice a creature, etc., just to get a 2/2 for 2. Now it just gets 2/2s for 2. And unfortunately, 2/2s for 2 have gotten a lot worse. They used to be the prototypical C card. You'd play them when you could, and if you had better stuff, they got the cut, but they were generally totally fine. Nowadays, I think we finally have to downgrade these to a C-. You should actively not be trying to play vanilla 2/2s, and only really do so if you whiffed on getting 23 playable cards or you desperately need a creature. Bears are dead. Long live Upside Bears. C- for Feral Maka. Up next is Flames of the Razeboar. Flames of the Razeboar is 5 and a red for an instant at uncommon. Flames of the Razeboar deals 4 damage to target creature an opponent controls. Then, Flames of the Razeboar deals 2 damage to each other creature that player controls if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Which you typically will, especially if you're Gruul. Maybe not as much if you're Rakdos, but still an okay chance of getting this off. This seems really good. it seems really good. You certainly have to pay for it. 6 mana is a bit of a tall ask in Gruul and Rakdos, but you will kill most creatures, and then potentially more if you do have Ferocious. And yeah, this is super curve dependent, because I think there will be some decks where you shouldn't play this. A 6-drop is just going to be way too expensive. But if your curve is even slightly big, then you should definitely consider the first of these. The second one, I'm a lot less sure about, because 2 6-drops can just ruin a deck. But the first one, I think, is a solid B. B for Flames of the Razeboar. Up next is Gates Ablaze. Gates Ablaze is 2 and a red for sorcery at uncommon. Gates Ablaze deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of creatures you control. So we've got another gate payoff. I actually think there's a gate payoff in every single color. Yeah, I think there's one in every single color, plus some other ones. Yeah, this is probably fine if you do want to give that Gates deck a try. And as I said, I think I'm slightly more sold on it being a real deck. Because a lot of the payoffs are across all the colors, though, I think it might be a little bit weird. I think people might actually get trapped into saying, oh, I can play the white and the blue and the black and the red and the green gate payoff. And that's not typically how gate decks work. You typically are a color, preferably green usually, and then you have the absolute best cards possible from other colors. And while you're technically 5 colors, you're usually 1 color, and then maybe like a second color, and then a third and fourth and fifth color. So don't get trapped into playing just every single one of these gate payoffs cards. I think you do need to pick and choose. But if you're in gates and red is kind of your secondish color, then this is probably fine-ish, dealing X damage to each creature. The trick with the gate deck we saw in Guilds of Ravnica is that you needed to live. You needed to live a little bit longer, so things like Centaur Peacemaker were actually really good to give you a bit of life. Getting to kill maybe all the creatures on the board, including yours, will help you live if you haven't already died. So I'm not entirely sure about this. I don't know exactly what the grade's going to be. I need to see that gate deck, because I honestly don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know if it's going to be incredible or if it's actually going to be awful. So I'm going to start this at like a C-. If you're in the gate deck, just because I don't really like these type of Wrath cards either. I don't like Wraths in Limited in general. And now, obviously, if you're not in the gate deck, you just don't play this. It's like an F. So C- for Gates Ablaze, and that rating really could change over time. I'm not sure. Up next is Gore Clan Wrecker. Gore Clan Wrecker is 3 and a red for a creature human warrior at common. It's a 2/2 with Riot and with Menace. So a 2/2 Menace haste for 4 is not my jam. It might get in for 2, maybe, but then it becomes super easy to block by turn 5 and onward. A 3/3 Menace is a little bit better, though, and should probably be the default casting of this. It doesn't really have a great comparison to past cards, but Sweatwork Brawlers is sort of similar, but was better because it had Improvise, and Dire Fleet Interloper was often a 3/3 Menace for 4, but Explorer was pretty good. Odds are this is a totally fine filler C, and you should probably play this like 90% of the time as a 3/3 no haste. The 2/2 haste for 4 just feels real bad. So a C for Gore Clan Wrecker. Up next is Goblin Gathering. Goblin Gathering is 2 and a red for a sorcery at common. Create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to 2 plus the number of cards named Goblin Gathering in your graveyard. The first one sucks. 2 vanilla 1/1s for 3 is really mediocre. We pay 2 for that most of the time. The second one is still not exciting. 3 1/1s for 3. That passes the vanilla test, but The third one, we're at 4 goblins. I'm not sold on this. Remember, the average pod only has 2-ish copies of a common, so you're not really going to be getting like 7 of these or anything. And if you're like me, I definitely read this as like doubling the number of cards or something, but no, it's only ever just 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5. And it does not count the one that you're actually casting at that moment. So I'm super out on this. I think it's a D. I don't think you want to play this. I don't think you want to play multiples of this. I'm totally out on the Goblin Gathering D. Up next is Gravelhide Goblin. Gravelhide Goblin is 1 and a red for a creature goblin shaman at common. It's a 2/1, and you can pay 3 and a green to give it +2/+2 until end of turn. So on its base, it's a piker, which is okay-ish in an aggro deck and much worse elsewhere. They kind of walk the line between C- and C. If you're in green, though, the potential pump, even if it's expensive, is totally fine because it pumps toughness as well. So in Gruul, this is a solid C. still not a C+, but it's solid C. If you're Rakdos, you should probably attempt to not play this if you can, and it's a C-. So C- or C, depending on which color combo you're in. Up next is Emulation Shaman. Emulation Shaman is 1 and a red for a creature via Shino Shaman at rare. It's a 1/3. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or land that isn't a mana ability, Emulation Shaman deals 1 damage to that player. Pay 3 red. Emulation Shaman gets +3/+3 and gains menace until end of turn. This is probably sideboard only, and even then I'm not sure it's great. 1 damage just is not that spectacular unless your opponent's really going ham on the activated abilities, and otherwise you have a 1/3 for 2 in your deck, which is not really what you want in red-black or red-green. And then someday you get a 4/6 menace if you spend your entire turn paying for it. D+. I want more aggro stuff in my red decks. I don't want this. So D+ for Emulation Shaman. I'll bring it in if they have some sort of activated ability that they're going over and over and over and over with. So D+, Emulation Shaman. Up next is Light Up the Stage. Light Up the Stage is 2 and a red for a sorcery at uncommon. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. Spectacle for a single red mana. This is probably a little bit better than people might think at first glance. It does say until the end of your next turn. So this is like the longest temporary card draw that I think we've ever seen in red. If it costs a single red mana, it's basically amazing. It's a divination for 1 red mana, more or less, kind of, sort of. And it does say play, meaning that you can play a land off of it. I think this will actually be an all-star in aggro, and honestly a relatively high pick. Maybe I'm starting too high, but I'm actually going to start this right up at a B-. Aggro just dreams of having card advantage like this, so B- for Light Up the Stage. Up next is Mirror March. Mirror March is 5 and a red for an enchantment at rare. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, flip a coin until you lose a flip. For each flip you won, create a token that's a copy of that creature. Those tokens gained haste. Exile them at the beginning of your next end step. This is dumb. I'm going to lose to it. You're going to lose to it. And if you're being serious about playing limited Magic, that doesn't matter, and you still should never play this. It's 50% for you to get absolutely nothing off of this. You pay 6 mana, you pass the turn, you didn't do anything, you play a creature, you flip a coin, and you get nothing. Well done, you wasted 6 mana. You get nothing, good day, sir. F. Mirror March is an awful card. Do not play this. You will lose to it because somebody plays a 6/6 and flips like 10 coins in a row. But that's variance, and that shouldn't change the way you play Magic, and you should not be playing this card. F for Mirror March. Up next is Mahdi Reveler. Mahdi Reveler is 1 and a red for a creature human shaman at rare. It's a 2/2 and has spectacle cost of 2 black-red. When Mahdi Reveler enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. If Mahdi Reveler's spectacle cost was paid instead, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. This seems great, and there's a lot going on here that you might not catch. Firstly, it's not a May. You must discard that card, then draw one. Secondly, it's not a cost. You still draw a card, even if this was your last card and you don't have one to discard. That's an amazing 2/2. I'd play it 110% of the time in Gruul or Rakdos decks. Then, later in the game, if my hand's empty, or this is my last card, if I top deck this, whatever, I have 4 mana in Rakdos, and I've dealt damage, which I'm Rakdos, hopefully I have. I can play this as a, overcosted 2/2, but draw 3 cards in black-red? Sold. This card's great. It's a snap first pick. It's not a bomb, but it's one of those very solid utility creatures. I've got this at a very solid B. Up next is Rubble Reading. Rubble Reading is 3 and a red for a sorcery at common. Destroy target land, scry 2. Absolutely not. Land destruction is extremely bad and rude, by the way. Attacking on Scry 2 does not make this any better. Any dream scenario where you take them off a color is wildly less common than the situation where they just have multiple lands of both colors, and all you did was take them off a land, and guess what? They took you off a card. Don't waste a card slot on this. It's wildly, literally, absolutely unplayable. F. Up next is Rubble Belt Recluse. Rubble Belt Recluse is 4 and a red for a creature Ogre Berserker at common. It's a 6/5. Rubble Belt Recluse attacks each combat, if able. A 6/5 for 5 is pretty darn fairly costed, if even undercosted, in fact. Attacking every turn is not really a downside with this creature, and with Rakdos or Gruul in general. It's not great, but I think this is still like a 22nd card. I think you do play this in both red decks relatively happily. I'm not going to go up to a C+ on it. I think there are decks where you might just have better cards, and this is super not a high pick, but I think I am just going to go with a solid C on this, like a very strong C for Rubble Belt Recluse. Up next is Rumbling Ruin. Rumbling Ruin is 5 and a red for a creature elemental at uncommon. It's a 6/6. When Rumbling Ruin enters the battlefield, count the number of +1/+1 creatures on creatures you control. Creatures your opponents control with power less than or equal to that number can't block this turn. This is interesting. It's a 6/6 for 6, but this is a round where the vanilla test starts to fall off. Without trample or something like that, a big dumb creature that costs a lot and just like gets chump blocked. But this has a pretty cool effect. If you falter their team, this could just be the end of the game, if not a huge swing. And it generally wouldn't take too many counters to do that. I think generally like 3 counters will a good amount of the time pull off an entire falter your opponent's team can't block, or it will leave them with like 1 blocker or so. This is probably just a curve topper game ender in a lot of aggro decks, in all of the ones except for like the lowest of low curve ones. I'd take this card relatively highly, and I think more highly prioritize Riot and a go wide strategy with it, so that I have a lot of creatures, I've got the counters, and I'm just going to smash face when this comes down. And if I don't kill them, well, I got a 6/6 along with my team that just attacked in for free. This is definitely going to be a real groan tester card for sure. It's going to just ruin your day a lot of the times when you see it come down. I've got this at, I think, a solid B. It is costly though, so I'm going to keep this at a B- for Rumbling Ruin. Up next is Scorch Mark. Scorch Mark is 1 and a red for an instant at common. Scorch Mark deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Totally solid. 2 mana shock, but it exiles. Solid, especially with all the afterlife, etc. This isn't going to be super first pickable at only 2 damage, but there will be packs where that is possible. It doesn't hit face, so it's not exactly as good as shock in that versatility type way, but all around it is super solid. B- for Scorch Mark. Very, very, very happy to see it. Up next is Gargan Hellkite. Gargan Hellkite is 3 red for a creature dragon at Mythic. It's a 4/4 with Riot, flying, and pay 3 and a red. Gargan Hellkite deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Activate this ability only if Gargan Hellkite has a +1/+1 counter on it. This is just a Stone Cold Bomb first pick every single time. A 4/4 flyer with haste for 5 is great. That's better than Volcanic Dragon. It'll just end some games, and other games that's such a huge swing that they're just probably dead in a turn or 2 anyways. Need a bit more time? Cool, forget the haste. Get yourself a vanilla test passing 5/5 flyer that then twin bolts on command for 4 mana. This is amazing. I think this is just another easy A+, 2 A+s in red right here, and this will never not be your pack 1 pick 1 if it's in the pack. Solid A+ for Gargan Hellkite. Awesome, fantastic card. Up next is my card, Skewer the Critics. Skewer the Critics is 2 and a red for a sorcery at common. Skewer the Critics deals 3 damage to any target, but of course you can spectacle it for a single mana. So yeah, when I got this card from WotC, I thought I was demoted getting a common. I thought, oh, they don't like my videos. They're giving me common cards now. And then I read it, and I knew it was going to be big. But holy moly, did I not expect it to kind of break the internet as much as I expected. Yeah, this thing is great. This thing is just amazing. It's a strong running to be the flat-out best common in the entire set, and it's very, very, very first pickable, just behind the bombs, and perhaps the most unconditional of removal. This is an easy B+. This is a solid card. It kills creatures. It kills opponents. What more can you ask for? Solid B+ for Skewer the Critics. Up next is Smeltwort Ignace. Smeltwort Ignace is 1 and a red for a creature elemental at uncommon. It's a 2/1. You can pay 2 and a red and sacrifice it to gain control of target creature with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. This is sort of cool. It's a piker, so we're already at like a floor of a C-. And later in the game, I get an active treason, but I only get to active treason a relatively smallish thing. But of course, if that's their only blocker, it doesn't really matter. But I'm also telling my opponent perhaps turns and turns and turns in advance that that's coming. Not a huge fan of this. I think you should probably cut it more often than not. Obviously, there's that fun sort of interaction with the sacrifice effects where you could steal their creature and sack it. But again, you're not really stealing a threat with this because of the power 3 or less. So I'm not a huge fan of this. I'm going to start not playing this. I've got it at like a C-. I'm going to keep my eye on it. I think it could go up to a C+ in all decks. Maybe. And I'll keep an eye on if it does work in the sacrifice deck or not. But I think I'd just prefer an active treason over this. So C- for Smeltwort Ignace. Up next is Spear Skewer. Spear Skewer is a single red mana for a creature goblin warrior at common. It's an 0/2 defender. Tap it, deal 1 damage to each player. I really like this. I love pingers, and pingers in a set with Spectacle is lovely. And at common, getting 2 of these is not going to be unheard of. Repeatable pinging, especially on a 1-drop, can amount to a large amount of damage over the game, and if your opponent has to use removal on this, even better. I want to draft the Pinger Spectacle Burn deck really, really badly, so watch for me to try that at least once. Now, this is an 0/2, so it's not blocking worth a darn. It's not like the 0/5s that we've seen before that ping, but hopefully that just doesn't matter, and hopefully I always have this in hand on turn 1, because that's where it's going to really shine. Coming down late game is maybe not going to be that great. I'm going to start very high at a C+ on this. I'm going to probably be wrong. I secretly want to give it a B- just because I really love pingers, but let's be too optimistic as opposed to insanely optimistic and give this a C+ for Spear Skewer. Up next is Spike Wheel Acrobat. Spike Wheel Acrobat is 3 and a red for a creature human rogue at common. It's a 5/2, but you can spectacle it out for 2 and a red. I hate 4 mana 5/2s. I really hate them. They die to everything. Yes, 5 is a big number, but 2 is a small number. And 4 mana, that's not a small number either. They die to everything. I tend to have them in like the D, super try not to play these range. If it's 3 mana, that's obviously better, but I'm not sure how much better. Like, it's better than a 3/2 for 3, but I'm also not a huge fan of those. I'll play them if I have to. I'm going to keep this at a C-. I just really would rather not play these unless I'm stuck for creatures or playables. Our second last card for the day is Storm Strike. Storm Strike is a single red mana for an instant at common. Target creature gets +1/+1 and gains first strike until end of turn. Also Scry 1. This card is fantastic. First strike combat tricks are my favorite because they frequently act like removal. A 1 mana +1/+0 and adding Scry to it is super good. Move over Sure Strike, this might be my favorite. This is pretty solid C+ combat trick. You include this in aggro if you have the spot, and you maybe even include the second one and still feel pretty darn good about it. Super solid combat trick, C+ for Storm Strike. And our final card for today is Tin Street Dodger. Tin Street Dodger is a single red mana for a fancy goblin. Creature goblin rogue at uncommon. It's a 1/1 with haste. Pay a single red mana. It can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with defender. I'm not playing this. I'm not playing a 1/1 with haste. That represents 1 damage. 2, if you're lucky, I guess, maybe. Paying mana to get through again? Not a fan of that. Any aggro deck worth its weight should be paying mana for more creatures, for burn spells, for stuff like that, not wasting mana on getting in a point of damage. Do not pay for this. Do not play this. I have this at a D-. I don't want to ever play Tin Street Dodger. I honestly can't really believe that it's an uncommon. D- for Tin Street Dodger. So that's going to wrap it up for red. Red looks pretty darn good. It's got 2 A+. I don't remember the last time I gave a single color 2 A+ before. Electro Dominance is insane, and Gargan Hellkite is very good. There's some other very good cards going on here. I have a strong belief that I will be playing red in my pre-release. I may go Gruul, I may go Rakdos. I haven't fully decided yet. But yeah, let me know what you're excited about in red. It looks like a very good color, and the sacrifice stuff going on here with active treason. Oh, there's a lot I want to try. Let me know what you think about red in the comments down below. Let me know what cards you agree with me, disagree with me on. Talk with me, talk with each other down below. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can find me on Twitter at the Mana Leek. That's Leek, like the vegetable, not the card. You can find me at facebook.com/themanaleek, twitch.com/themanaleek, where I'll be streaming on the 16th. WotC has invited me to a streamer event where I get an account that is fully stocked with gems and cards to play all day with other streamers. And on the 17th, we'll be doing another stream with an Inked Gaming giveaway, so check that out. Click that thumbs up button. Click subscribe if you want to see more. And if you do have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, see y'all tomorrow for the green set review.